Hello, my name is Liam, and this is a love story, well, sort of. I've always imagined love to be this grand, beautiful thing, and I did believe it wholly after I met the love of my life, Carol. However, a series of shocking betrayals and surprises confronted me with the bitter reality that sometimes the people we love the most can shock us unexpectedly. I first met Carol in school. We were paired together during a science project, and I remember the nervous excitement between us. It was a mix of childhood innocence with the excitement of one's first crush. I walked her home after school that day, and I remember just how giddy I was. She lived in a massive home, a posh mansion to be honest. It was undoubtedly intimidating. Her father, Daniel, greeted us at the front door and invited me in. Carol's mother, Lucy, invited me for lunch, and I would never forget how warm and hospitable they'd been. Her parents asked me to keep dropping by often, and Carol seemed delighted too. I walked back home that day with the biggest grin on my face. However, knowing how events unfolded in the future, I simply laugh when I think back on this memory, the sheer unpredictability of life. While Carol and I remained very close friends during school, there were plenty of times when I felt like confessing my feelings to her. However, I always held back from doing so, fearing that it would ruin an otherwise beautiful friendship. I figured we were too young and stupid to be caught up in a relationship with all its complexities and labels. I never wanted to spoil our friendship over this, and I decided to let it go then. Carol had always been, first and foremost, a close friend, and I was eager to keep things that way. But as we passed out of school, a shocking event occurred. I excitedly reached the classroom on the last day of school, but Carol was nowhere to be found. I asked Adam, one of our mutual friends, where she was. "Didn't you hear? She came in early today with her parents to meet the principal. She's leaving town." I was stunned by this news. Apparently, Daniel's business required him to take Carol and Lucy to another state, and they'd relocated at a moment's notice. I was crushed to lose my closest childhood friend. And without so much as a goodbye, Carol disappeared. I was disappointed that she didn't breathe a word of this before leaving, but I had to come to terms with it. I wouldn't see Carol again, not until several years later. I went through high school, meeting a variety of new people. There was occasional bullying from the tall football jocks, but I was able to survive with a handful of friends by my side. High school was hectic and energetic, and even though I wasn't the most social individual, I found it to be a thrilling time. It was a lot more liberating than school, and it was our first time being bold, adventurous, and rebellious young teens. Unfortunately, I was never romantically interested in anyone back then. As stupid as it was, my heart clung to memories of Carol, and despite spending time with plenty of people, I hoped I could reunite with her someday. And that day arrived only a short while after I passed out of high school. When it came to college, I was torn between choosing a culinary institute or a music academy. I was exceptionally fond of cooking and aspired to be a Michelin star chef someday, but at the same time, I was also a dedicated piano player and wanted to pursue a music career too. Unfortunately, my parents weren't wealthy enough to enroll me in either specialization, and they suggested I should acquire a business degree first before indulging in my passions. It initially broke my heart, but I was aware that dreams wouldn't come so easily. I saw my parents' logic of a plan A and a plan B when it came to something as important as my career. My grades were decent enough to help me secure a place in a great business college, but little did I know that this was where my life would change forever. College was far more challenging than I could have ever imagined, and studying business, a subject I wasn't even keen on, made it all the more difficult to thrive. My social circle was very restricted, as I was surrounded by students from elite backgrounds and absolutely genius minds, and I felt increasingly out of place in such an environment, like I was trying to run a marathon against world-class athletes. The lack of any business intellect or family wealth alienated me from most of the crowd at college, until a massive party was held in the first week for freshmen. Everyone was going, and I was incredibly nervous. I didn't particularly know anyone at all, but I decided to go anyway, eager to meet new people. However, I would instead be faced with a blast from the past. A beautiful girl was standing around a large crowd. I helped myself to some snacks, and she turned around to grab some too. And that's when I first noticed her. The recognition was instant. "Carol?" "Yes, hi. Do I know you?" "It's me, Liam, from school." Carol was pleasantly surprised, and the two of us embraced each other. I couldn't believe it. After all this time, we'd finally found each other again. If I'd only known what awaited me in the future, perhaps I would have walked away there and then, but life can never be planned. Carol and I spent most of the night catching up. I only joined college, because Dad wanted me to be a part of the business. That's incredible. Well, not really. I'm not interested in all this at all, but I'm trying my best to scrape through. Elijah's been helping a lot. Who's Elijah? He's a close friend. I'll introduce you to him. Carol took me to a secluded area outside, where a couple of boys were huddled in a corner. She called out to one of them. Elijah, come over here. A tall, athletic freshman sprinted over to us. I was immediately intimidated. Elijah, this is Liam. He was a school friend of mine. It's nice to meet you. Good to see you too. Carol, all of us are thinking of going down to Owen's place right now. You want to tag along? Sure thing. Liam, you could join us too. Before I could say another word, Elijah instantly spoke up. I'm afraid not. Owen keeps it pretty exclusive. We can't have random people coming in, you know. Don't be rude, Elijah. Come on, Carol, I don't make the rules. He's a nobody. Let him stay here. You can meet him later. Carol seemed very apologetic. Listen, Liam, I'm so sorry. It's okay, we can meet another time. I'm so glad you understand. I'll see you around. She hurried away with Elijah and his friends, and I heard them giggling and snickering. Upset by the sudden turn of events, I walked back to my dorm and decided not to let it affect me so much. The next few months that followed were the same. Elijah's presence overshadowed every interaction between Carol and me. It felt intrusive after a certain point. I was quite frustrated, given that Carol was not only my first friend ever, but also my only friend on a campus where I otherwise felt excluded. It was difficult to ever catch Carol alone for a moment, as she always seemed to be with Elijah and his friends. But the most frustrating part of it all was Elijah's harsh treatment towards me. Once, when he saw me approaching Carol, he rushed over to me and physically pushed me away. Back off, dummy. She isn't in the mood to see you right now. But she didn't even see me. I just wanted to say hi. Oh, I bet you did. But like I said, she doesn't want to see anyone right now. So scram before I have to push you for real. Elijah continued to remain hostile, and I tried to socialize with others on campus, fearing my friendship with Carol was a lost cause. It was then that I first met Noah and Sadie. They joined the semester a bit late and were also newcomers finding themselves out of place in an elite environment. While I was hurt about losing Carol to someone like Elijah, I was relieved to have found two new friends. Noah and Sadie were both very humble and energetic people and were a refreshing change from the uptight crowd on campus. The three of us began spending time together and bonding over shared interests. Noah was a superb guitar player and we spoke for hours about music and even took part in the college band. Sadie was the one who was excellent at business and genuinely passionate about the degree she wanted to manage her father's business, and she helped Noah and me through our assignments. What started as a lonesome college environment began to feel homely once again with the two of them. But everything suddenly changed one evening. I was headed to the cafeteria after class to grab a quick bite. Sadie was studying for the midterms, while Noah was fast asleep in his dorm room. As I entered the cafeteria, I saw Carol sitting alone at a table. It'd been ages since I'd seen her. I approached her and noticed she was crying. Carol. What's the matter? Are you okay? Hey Liam, I'm fine, don't worry. Are you sure? Your face is all red. I hope everything's okay. Carol seemed torn about whether to tell me something or not. She finally proceeded to say it. It's just that Elijah's gotten injured. He was driving recklessly and got into an accident. He's been hospitalized for a week. Oh my God, Carol, I'm so sorry. But the worst part is, he was with another girl in the car. They were together, and Carol began crying some more and I consoled her and calmed her down. She finally confessed something that made my heart sink. Honestly, Elijah and I were kind of together, and now that he was with that other girl, I don't even know what to say. I was crushed by this sudden revelation and felt more conflicted than ever before. I despised Elijah for his ill treatment towards me, and the fact that he was not only seeing Carol but also cheated on her stunned me. I couldn't wrap my head around how someone could do such a thing to her, but keeping aside all my confused feelings, I prioritized Carol first and made sure she was all right. She took a few days to recover while I broke the news to Noah and Sadie. As close friends, they were aware of my past with Carol and my crush on her, but they advised me to let it go. Over the weekend, Carol visited Elijah at the hospital and later met me in the college park while I was sitting with Noah. Hey Liam, could I talk to you for a minute? In private? Sure thing. Noah was puzzled as I went over to Carol. "What's up?" "Elijah's much better now. He's recovering rapidly, so that's great." "Yeah, that's good. But I also broke things off with him. We're not together anymore." "Oh, that's unfortunate." "Yeah, so I guess I'll see you around then." As Carol walked away, I won't lie that I felt a tinge of happiness. It was a massive relief that she'd cut things off with Elijah and distanced herself from such a toxic individual. It also meant I could strike up a proper friendship with her again. Noah and Sadie seemed hesitant about this when I shared this incident with them. "I honestly feel like you're going to get hurt, Liam." "Exactly. I mean, you told us that she never defended you in front of Elijah and even laughed sometimes when he insulted you." I felt knots in my stomach knowing that they were right. In hindsight, I find it incredible how Noah and Sadie first saw the signs in Carol while I blatantly ignored their advice back then. I began spending more time with Carol, and it was a magical feeling. It's as though our long-lost friendship had been rekindled all these years later, and in Elijah's absence, Carol seemed much more eager to meet me. Noah and Sadie had cautioned me, but at the same time, they were happy to see me spending time with Carol. I was able to give equal attention to her as well as my friends. However, a week before our midterms, there was a sudden turn of events. Elijah returned to campus, now completely recovered. He desperately tried to make amends with Carol, who shunned him every chance she got. I remember sitting in the park with Noah, Sadie, and Carol as we practiced for our papers. It was all calm until we saw Elijah and his group approaching us. "Carol, I want to talk to you." "Please go away, Elijah." "I don't want to see you or talk to you." "Carol, please, it'll just take a minute." "Can't you get it through your thick head? Just leave, Elijah." "Carol, come with me." "Hey, leave her alone. She said she doesn't want to come." Elijah and his group snickered. "Fine, stick around with your loser group and your cheapskate knight in shining armor, Carol. You know you'll come back to me someday. Until then, enjoy time with these pathetic folks." "Watch it. Get out of here, Elijah." Elijah didn't engage us any further and walked away with his group. It was a tense moment, and we were relieved that Elijah had left us alone. We continued studying together that week and relied on Sadie's guidance. With Elijah out of the picture, my friendship rekindled with Carol, and with Noah and Sadie by my side, I assumed things were finally starting to look up. But little did I know that this marked the start of a strange, tumultuous time in my life. Noah, Sadie, and I passed midterms with glowing results. Unfortunately, Carol barely managed to pass. While the three of us celebrated at a local pub, we also brought Carol along with us, trying to console her and lighten up her mood. Late at night, as we were leaving the pub and heading back to campus, Carol pulled me aside to talk. "Liam, I feel a bit strange." "What's the matter?" "I don't know. I'm upset about not passing, but I feel like Sadie didn't teach me as well as she taught Noah and you." "What are you talking about? She coached all of us together and helped you plenty of times, didn't she?" "I don't know. I don't think it was fair of her not to teach me well." I was conflicted by Carol's remarks about Sadie. I'd personally seen her coach us all so well, and I didn't quite understand Carol's criticism of her. It felt as though Carol was slightly bitter and helpless about her grades and wanted somebody to blame for them. A month later, as Carol and I were exiting a lecture hall, we came across Elijah and his new girlfriend, Tracy. The two of them walked past us, and while I didn't care at all, Carol seemed quite affected by it. I asked her if she was all right, but she ignored it and claimed that she was fine. This should have honestly been the first warning sign, but it never struck me until it was too late. Only a week later, Carol and I went out for a candlelight dinner at her insistence. I remember telling Noah and Sadie how excited I was, and despite their reservations about Carol, they were endlessly happy for me. As Carol and I finished dinner, she floated a question at dessert. "So, Liam, I wanted to ask you something." "Sure, ask away." "I've been thinking. We've spent so much time together, we even go way back. Don't you think it's time for us to?" I immediately understood what was coming. Time for us to date? Yes. "Carol, are you sure? You still seemed a bit off about Elijah and Tracy last week." "I don't care about them. Elijah's history to me. You're all that matters." I was hesitant, but figured that if Carol wanted to give dating a try and assured me she was over Elijah, perhaps we could start on the right foot again. I was excited at the prospect of a relationship with her. Although we'd rekindled as friends after all this time, I undeniably had some feelings, and I was glad Carol reciprocated them too. Noah and Sadie were delighted when I told them the news, and I couldn't be happier that Carol and I were finally together after all this time. While doubts about Elijah lingered, I decided not to pay them much heed, however. This would return to haunt me later. I hoped that with everything that was going on, things would become better now. Instead, they were headed in the opposite direction. As Carol and I began spending more time as partners, for some reason, she grew very annoyed about Noah and Sadie. "It's like they suck up all your time, Liam, and you clearly prioritize them over me." "Oh, come on, that's not true." "It's very much true, and I'm frankly hurt." What began as a blissful romantic relationship soon devolved into continuous arguments. Noah and Sadie would even ask me if things were all right, and I'd lie to them to avoid worrying them. I tried assuring Carol that I was balancing my time with her as well as with my friends. Since we were dating, I naturally spent a lot more time with her, and even temporarily quit the college band after Carol asked me to. It was a sacrifice I was ready to make because I wanted to ensure that she never felt neglected. That's not to say it was a difficult relationship. We had beautiful moments, and with her, time just slipped by. Before we knew it, we were fast approaching our final year at college. But as the years went by, the doubts about Carol's true feelings for Elijah lingered in my mind. Elijah had moved on from Tracy and had found 2 new girlfriends ever since then. For some reason, this topic dominated my conversations with Carol. But I can't believe he's still acting this way. I mean, moving on from one girlfriend to another, it's just so damn childish. "Carol, I don't know we've got to talk about him so often. You said it yourself, he's history, so why bother? We talk about him every alternate day at this point." "I'm just trying to make conversation, Liam. Clearly you don't care about me or my feelings." Over time, it became difficult to navigate this topic. I understood that Elijah was a very popular figure at college and had a history with Carol, but I wished she would focus on the 2 of us and our relationship instead. Another startling incident occurred when my parents visited the campus. They were around town for Dad's business trip and wanted to drop by the college to see how I was doing. I excitedly showed them around campus and introduced them to Noah and Sadie as well. I saw Carol walking in the corridor and called out to her, eager to introduce her to my parents. I told her about them coming over and hoped they'd hit it off. She was understandably nervous, but the way Carol reacted was quite unexpected. "Carol, these are my parents. Nice to meet you." "Mom, Dad, Carol is my college friend. That's all we are." Anyway, I got to hurry. I'm meeting a friend for lunch. But I thought we were going for lunch together. "Sorry, change of plans." "Bye, see ya." She sprinted away as if she couldn't wait to get out of there fast enough. I was taken aback by her behavior, particularly her insistence on calling me her friend right as I was about to introduce her as my girlfriend. I tried not to seem too bothered by it. Despite telling Carol a week earlier about my parents, I was upset that she'd scheduled plans that day. A few months later, there was a prom being held on campus and Carol and I naturally went together, while Noah and Sadie came as well. As I'd spent more time with Carol, I'd been completely oblivious to a growing romance between Noah and Sadie, and the 2 of them shared the news with me during prom week. I honestly couldn't be happier. They'd always been incredibly supportive of each other and were perfectly suited together. During prom night, as Noah and Sadie were getting ready, I met Carol and shared the news with her about them. However, her response was unusually cold. "That's nice. Does that mean you'll finally prioritize me now?" "But I always do, Carol." "Yeah, whatever. Let's head for prom." I couldn't understand her cold reaction, and the 2 of us left for prom night. I asked Carol if she was all right with hanging out with Noah and Sadie at prom, or if she wanted to hang out alone. She insisted she'd be fine, but didn't utter a word to either of them throughout. We shared a slow dance and it was wonderful, but I couldn't help but notice that she was distracted by something even though she reassured me that she wasn't. After the dance, Carol said she had to use the restroom and would be back soon. I spent time with Noah and Sadie until then, but after a while I went towards the restroom to make sure she was all right. It was here that I was met with a shock. Carol and Elijah were standing outside the restroom, laughing and conversing. Their faces went cold as I approached them. "Oh, hey, Liam. I thought you had to use the restroom." "I did actually, but I met Elijah and we were just talking for a bit." Elijah started walking away. He smiled at Carol as he left. "I'll see you around, Carol. Take care." As he left, I confronted Carol. "What was that about?" "Nothing. I just met him and we spoke, that's all." "I thought you hated him and couldn't stand him." Liam, you're being a buzzkill. Just relax, we were talking as friends again, that's all. Carol and I returned to prom, but my mind was conflicted now. I couldn't get that incident off my mind. A week after prom, I brought up my concern with Carol once again, telling her that I felt it was strange that she complained so much about Elijah and was speaking to him again without even telling me. It just happened so suddenly at prom, Liam. Can you relax? Although it lingered on my mind, I decided to ignore the topic. Our final year exams were rapidly approaching, and while Sadie offered to help Carol with her doubts, Carol firmly declined. I asked her if she wanted me to coach her instead, but she declined me too. Her grades were quite low, and I was honestly worried about her. A week before exams, Carol suddenly told me that she was taking the help of a friend. I was suspicious and asked if it was Elijah, but she assured me that it wasn't him. However, I later learned that she was going to a study group full of Elijah's friends. I was concerned since that group never took academics seriously, and I wondered why Carol would want to spend such a crucial week with them. I asked her if it had anything to do with Elijah, which she denied again. As the exams got over, Noah, Sadie, and I were elated as our papers were excellent, but Carol seemed more disappointed than I'd ever seen her. I consoled her for a full week after the exams ended. I was still upset that she chose not to study with Sadie or me, and instead spent her time with Elijah and his group. But I didn't mention this at all, as I didn't wish to blame her and pile onto her stress. As we continued spending time together and moved off campus, this was when differences between Carol and me truly started to arise. Carol demanded that she wanted to take a lavish trip abroad to celebrate the end of college, and I explained to her that it would be difficult for me. I was interning at a local business while Noah and I also took up occasional music gigs for money. But I was nowhere near close to being able to afford a luxury trip for Carol. I expressed this worry to her and assured her that I was working towards our best possible future. However, Carol believed this was a poor excuse on my part and that I didn't love her enough. She was upset and even took the trip abroad with a couple of her friends, leaving me back here. On the one hand, I was glad she was enjoying, but on the other hand, I couldn't help but wonder if she was indeed happy with me. Once she returned from her trip, I even voiced my concerns to her. I just get worried sometimes, Carol. You're used to an amazing lifestyle, and I'm trying my best to save up and search for jobs to give you the life you deserve. But if you're unhappy, I don't want to force you to stay with me. You deserve to be with someone who can give you all those things. Oh, don't be silly, Liam. Stop worrying so much, I'm fine. I like you for who you are. I mean, someone like Elijah could easily afford those things, but I'm not dating him, am I? I'm with you. I wasn't sure what to make of her words, especially that casual remark about Elijah. A month later, our graduation ceremony arrived. It was an exciting and emotionally charged atmosphere. All students were present with their parents. It was here that I finally met Carol's parents, Daniel and Lucy, again after all those years. However, Carol didn't seem as interested in introducing me to them. I told my parents about Carol and I didn't understand her hesitance to talk about me with her parents. The ceremony itself was beautiful, and it was one of those golden, memorable moments of life. There was also the unfortunate realization that things wouldn't be the same anymore. We couldn't be carefree teenagers and were now faced with real-world responsibilities. I knew Carol came from an extremely wealthy upbringing, but I was determined to work hard and provide a beautiful and fulfilling life for both of us. But nothing could have prepared me for the twists and turns life was about to take. Years flew by and life had changed quite a bit since graduation. Sadie moved back to her home state to assist her father's business as she'd always intended to. Noah left to help his uncle's startup while also pursuing a musical career on the side. It was a bittersweet goodbye. The two of them were immensely talented and had enormous potential. As for Carol, she was planning to intern at her father Daniel's company at a senior-level position. Given that Daniel's company was a massive and popular corporation, I also applied there and was eventually accepted after a rigorous interview. Naturally, I was working in a much more junior position compared to Carol, but I was happy to be a part of the same company as my partner. For the next few years, I worked immensely hard, rising through the ranks and spending day and night working on extensive company projects. I lived in a small apartment and Carol continued to live with her parents, stating that she'd stay with me after I was financially settled and could afford a decent house for her. Alongside all the tiring corporate work, I also made time to indulge in my passions such as starting my own successful food truck, which I not only loved doing, but also helped me fetch a hefty side income too. I worked at the truck over the weekend and it helped reignite my love for cooking. However, Carol soon dropped out of Daniel's company, claiming it was too much work to handle. She visited me at the food truck once and saw me busy with customers. I even shut the truck early for her and she only said, "My God, I can't believe you do this. I don't get why you have to take up these useless side projects. I mean, do you realize how lowly this seems?" Carol's words greatly affected me. I began feeling as though I didn't quite measure up to her standards, and even though I was doing all of this to create a financially stable future for the two of us, I just wish she'd been supportive. As the food truck business bloomed over time, and I advanced to a more senior position at Daniel's company, I finally decided to take the next step forward with Carol. I asked her plenty of times about our future together, and each time, she assured me that she wanted to spend it with me. I'd even saved up enough and had purchased a luxury apartment for Carol, the kind she'd always dreamed of. I even registered it under her name. We'd spent 5 years together, and despite the ups and downs, I was committed to building a successful future with her, and the day had finally arrived. I treated Carol to an expensive dinner at her favorite restaurant and in a private area. I knelt on one knee and asked for her hand in marriage. I'd even purchased an expensive ring which she told me she loved. The apartment and the ring cost a fortune, but I didn't care much for price tags when it came to Carol. "Will you marry me, Carol?" Carol was nervous and began laughing and nodding her head. I did sense some very slight hesitance. "Yes." "You're sure, aren't you?" "Of course, Liam. Of course." Carol left home early that night, claiming she wasn't feeling too well. I drove her home, and on the way back I couldn't help feeling excited about our life together. I'd even given her the keys to the apartment, and she was thrilled. But little did I realize that this joyous occasion marked the start of a series of downfalls. The first bombshell came the next morning itself. As I arrived for work, Daniel called me to his office. Since I'd proposed to Carol the previous night, I assumed he wanted to congratulate me or perhaps talk about the future. Despite my personal connection to him, I'd never been directly granted an audience with Daniel. I was anxious as I entered his office and took a seat, and sadly enough, I was right to have been worried. "Liam, I'm going to cut right to the chase. Carol told me you proposed to her last night. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir. I figured that." "I'm going to stop you right there. You see, Carol is my only daughter and she's always been used to a certain lifestyle." "I understand, sir. Which is why I purchased an apartment for her last week and—" "You don't understand what I'm saying, Liam. Buying a luxury apartment is hardly an achievement. We have 12 luxury holiday homes across the world. Is that the kind of wealth you could ever provide her with?" I instantly felt smaller and inferior. It's as if Daniel had directly attacked all my insecurities in my relationship with Carol. "Hell, there was this bloke from your college, Elijah. His father and I golfed together. I thought he was a perfect man for Carol, but she still chose you. I don't think you can give her the life she wants." "Sir, that's honestly not for you to decide." I immediately regretted saying that aloud. I had to remember that Daniel wasn't just Carol's father, but also my boss. "Oh, is that so? You want me to be honest with you? I don't approve of your engagement. Frankly, you don't even meet the sky-high expectations I'd always had for my daughter. Not even close." "Sir, Carol is more than happy with me, and while I appreciate your concern, this is strictly between her and me, and I don't appreciate taunts about my status. I worked very hard to get here." "And you're suggesting I didn't?" "No, sir, That's enough. Is this how you want to do it? Fine. I'm dismissing you for your sheer attitude and arrogance." "Sir, please." "Another word, and I'm letting you go. That's a warning. You're not worthy of Carol. You're nobody to decide that. It's really up to Carol. That's it. Get out. Pack your things and leave. You're fired." "Sir, you can't do this." "Out. I want your desk cleared in an hour." Devastated by the conversation, I packed my things and left the building. I called Carol to let her know what had happened. She confessed to me that Daniel had shouted at her and warned that he didn't approve of our engagement and refused to give us his blessings. Carol wept endlessly on the phone. We met in person the same day, and I told her how I'd lost my job and how cruel Daniel had been. The two of us shared a tearful embrace, and Carol explained that she couldn't defy her father. My dismissal from his company, plus Daniel's influence in general, would only make our lives miserable. I was shattered. Right when I was convinced that Carol and I were all set to marry, Daniel's words and disapproval had destroyed everything. Carol was heartbroken and said that she couldn't go against her father and would have to break things off between us. The suddenness of these events left me in a terrible state. Carol was broken over our lost future and the apartment I'd just purchased for her. I assured her it was still hers and that I wouldn't be taking it back. Eventually, Carol and I ceased talking to make things easier for both of us. We both needed to take time to recover from the aftermath of our engagement. For the next year, I focused on finding a new job again. I had to sell off the food truck just to make ends meet, and I even took out a mortgage on my apartment. I couldn't sell the ring or the lavish home I'd bought for Carol, and despite how things ended, I wanted those things to belong to her. However, I couldn't have been stupider. As a year passed, I'd gotten a job as a manager at a furniture business. It was nowhere close to the prestige and pay of Daniel's company, but I was still grateful to be employed. I returned home that night and was about to call it a day when someone rang my doorbell. I was curious as to who it could be. I was in for an unbelievable surprise as I opened the door. "Sir?" Daniel stood outside my apartment. He looked quite serious. "Could I come in, Liam?" "Of course." I ushered him inside and we sat in the living room. He was the last person I ever expected to see. That too a year since everything had occurred. "Liam, I'm afraid I have a confession to make." "What is it, sir?" "Well, a year ago, I said some terrible things to you. I don't expect your forgiveness because what I said was truly unforgivable, but they weren't my words." "Wait, what? What do you mean?" "The guilt's been eating me up for an entire year, and I just had to be honest with you. My daughter asked me to say all those things to you. She didn't want to go ahead with your marriage." "What?" "I'm so sorry, Liam. She told me she was tired of your status and was dying to break up with you. She even asked me to fire you so that you didn't have any connection to our family." My head started to spin. I could barely register the complete shock and horror of Daniel's confession. I replayed every happy moment with Carol in my head and wondered had she been a stranger all along. Did she ever love me? Heartbroken didn't even cover the extent of my feelings at that moment. "Liam, I'm sorry for everything. I'm ashamed of my daughter. I'd love to have you back at the company again." "You know, you should be ashamed of yourself, sir. You could have ignored your daughter, but instead you took part in her scheme. You've ruined my life and I'd like you to leave. I never want to see you or your daughter ever again." Daniel didn't protest and simply left, admitting defeat. Furious and my mind bursting with rage, I tried contacting Carol, but she didn't answer my calls. I drove over to the luxury apartment I'd bought for her, but I was greeted by the shock of a lifetime. The living room had glass walls, and I watched from afar as Carol and Elijah intimately hugged each other and sat on the couch of that apartment. I even overheard a conversation between the two of them. "Have you packed your bags?" "I'll finish it in an hour. Our flight's in the morning. Relax, we'll be fine. Caribbean beaches, here we come. Whose place is this anyway? Your dad gifted you this." "Oh no, it's from that dude. You know, the one from college." "Wait, Liam? That dork? How do you afford this?" "Beats me. I broke things off. It's all mine anyway now." "Really? He left all this for you even after you broke up? Man, he's way more stupider than I thought." Carol's deception had just reached another peak. It truly felt like I was about to marry a complete stranger. Carol had been the love of my life, but had our whole relationship been built on a bunch of lies? I was left feeling abandoned, emotionally shattered. I decided not to confront them at that moment. I couldn't let Carol off the hook so easily. I returned to my apartment to collect my thoughts. I took the next few days to cool down and think of my next move. Carol didn't even bother to return my calls, and all her intentions were clear now. None of it ever mattered to her. As I thought about everything, a possible plan came to mind. Carol was an expert manipulator and swayed things to her advantage. But her main weakness was chasing after wealth. There was no doubt that if she found someone wealthier and more attractive than Elijah, she would immediately move on to him. Keeping this in mind, I gradually began thinking of something. An idea struck me. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I didn't have anything to lose anyway. I started creating an online personality, posing as a wealthy man who just started his own Fortune 500 company. I posted extravagant social media posts and stories, after which I sent Carol a follow request. The whole thing was too risky and too stupid to have worked, but it was certainly worth a shot. Carol posted about her recent Caribbean vacation on social media, and that was my way in. I posted a fake picture too, and initiated a conversation with Carol. We began texting normally at first, and as weeks passed by, I lied to her about the extremely rich lifestyle I led. As much as I disliked the entire idea, it was almost too easy. Within no time, Carol started texting me about her dissatisfied life with Elijah and how he'd sometimes refuse to get her the things she craved. I promised her that I could afford so much more for her, and even sent her fake photographs of luxury cars and jewelry. As expected, Carol fell for all of it. It was impossible how quickly she believed the illusion of a richer life. What I never expected, though, was just how much she vented about Elijah. I honestly felt disgusted. She'd already betrayed me for Elijah and had been dishonest throughout, but the fact that she didn't even hesitate to betray Elijah spoke volumes about her character. A few months passed by and I kept leading Carol on. She continued to openly vent about everyone in her life, including Daniel and her closest friends. She shockingly revealed that she only used Daniel for his money and didn't care much about her father. She openly confessed the worst things about Elijah and her friends and told me that she didn't care about any of them anymore and just wanted to meet me in person to start our life together. This was my chance. I asked Carol to meet me at the same expensive restaurant I'd proposed to her at and told her I'd be running late. She waited for me for a few minutes and then hours. Meanwhile, I took screenshots of my conversations with Carol and sent them to everyone: Elijah, her father, and her closest friends. All the while, Carol continued to wait at the restaurant while all the people in her life learned of her betrayal. She left the restaurant as they had to shut for the night, and she realized nobody was showing up. To her surprise, the screenshots had already been leaked. Soon enough, Elijah broke up with her, her closest friends were disgusted by her, and so was her father. I even withdrew control of the lavish apartment and sold it off behind Carol's back. I was able to buy back my food truck and kickstart my passionate business once again. For everything Carol had done, all the lies she'd spun, and the extent of her betrayal, I couldn't have been more satisfied with the outcome of things. Finally, she had to face the consequences of her selfish behavior and actions,